Welcome back, VidHeads. In this video, this is the first video of the series Davinci Resolve for beginners. Now, you might be one of the guys that may think that Davinci Resolve is super complicated. It's really not super complicated. It's just not intuitive, right? Maybe you're coming from a different platform and you're trying to gain the confidence to give Davinci Resolve a shot. And so hopefully this video will help you do that if you so choose. Now, I'm gonna kind of go pretty quick through this. You have the ability to rewind and check it out, you know, if you missed something. But I'm gonna make a library of these videos so that we can all be able to use these videos to be able to do what we need to do in Davinci Resolve, especially for beginners. Let's just dive right in. So the first tab here is the media tab. This is where we ingest our clips. The second tab is the cut page. So this is where we would do our rough cuts. I really don't use the cut page at all, but that's what it's for. This is our edit tab. This is where we do most of our adjustments and editing and all that good stuff. But we will get to that when I bring in some footage and we begin to start editing. Now, this is Fusion. Fusion is comparable to like After Effects, if you know anything about Adobe Creative Cloud, that kind of thing, about composition, right? And then we have the color page. The color page has tons of different tools to be able to use, and we definitely will not be covering all of them in this video, but we will touch on some of them so that we can kind of get started. And let's go over here to audio. Now audio, I have some things to show you in audio, and that won't be in this video, but it'll be in some videos coming up. And I think you're really gonna like the way the audio is set up in this editing suite. Now, I come from Adobe Creative Cloud, and we had different applications you had to go into in order to get all this done, right? You had Audition for audio, you had After Effects for composition, you had Premiere Pro for your final editing, you know, all these types of things. With Davinci Resolve, everything seems to be here in one application. It makes it super easy. We have our last tab here, which is our delivery tab. This tab allows us to render out our edit so that we can actually upload it or, you know, do whatever deliverables we need to do with it, right? So let's just dive right in right now. We have our media tab. In our media tab, we want to ingest some footage. So let me go get some. Okay, so I'm gonna pick out the Nikon RAW clips here. I'm gonna hold Control and then left click just to select different clips that I want. And then I can just drag them down here into the Davinci Resolve, right? But let's just get right into it. I'm gonna go to the Edit tab. So now I have these clips here. I can just drag the clip down here onto the timeline like this. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get rid of this audio here. So I'm gonna unlink. Then I'm select just the audio, and then I'm gonna Control X. I'm gonna get rid of it. All right, so looking at our clip here, I'm gonna go over to our inspector. Now, this tab over here in our inspector is File. It's gonna give you information on the actual clip itself. So it was shot in 6K at 60 frames per second, Nikon RAW. So let's go over to the video here. Video tab. The video tab allows you to transform it, crop, composition, speed change, stabilize, lens correction, all these great tools, right? And so what we want to do first is I want to change the speed because it was shot in 60 frames per second and I'm on a 24 frames per second timeline. And how do I know I'm on a 24 frames per second timeline? Good question. Let me show you. You go down here to the cog right here. This is your timeline settings. Again, if you didn't know, you wouldn't know, right? It's just those idiosyncrasies that someone has to show it to you, right? It's not complicated. So right now, this is showing at 4K. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take it down from 4K to 1920 by 1080. It just helps. It's just another thing that I'm able to reduce the size when I'm working with it and then I can put it back to 4K when I'm ready to render it. So by reducing the size, it takes less resources to actually edit it, right? So it's at 1920 by 1080 at 24 frames per second. So we're gonna save that. If your clip is 60 frames per second and you wanted to put it on a 24 frames per second timeline, that'll be 40%. So let's double click. I'm gonna type in 40, enter, right? So now what you do now is you hover over the edge of the clip. You'll get this icon here. And when you left click on it, you can just drag it right out. Now you've dragged out that clip to a 24 frames per second timeline, even though you shot it in 60 frames per second. So it's gonna look slow motion. Okay, so now we got the slow motion. So now we want to start bringing out the colors. And we're gonna go to our color tab. Now these are what you call nodes. Nodes are comparable to, like, inside of Adobe Premiere Pro, it would be layers, right? I never worked with Final Cut, so I'm sorry, I don't know what the corresponding term would be in Final Cut, but here in Davinci Resolve, they call them nodes. Now you've heard people talk about node trees and it looks so complex, they have all these nodes all over the place. Mainly all that is they're organizing the way they adjust their clip. That's all it is. It's just organization, right? You don't have to have all those nodes in order to be able to render out a good looking image. In this video, we're not gonna worry about node trees. We're just gonna make a few nodes so that we can do what we need to do and get the clip rendered out. I'm gonna show you guys two different ways that I use to bring out colors. The first, we're gonna right click here and you see the node label. I'm gonna label this. I'm gonna label it CST, and that's for color space transform. So I know I've shot this in Nikon RAW, so I'm gonna right click, I'm gonna go down to LUT, and I'm gonna grab my color space transform for Nikon RAW. Now this was shot on a Z6 Mark III, so I'm gonna grab that LUT, and voila, now you have it. Now it looks a little bright. I shot this exposed to the right, so it's a little bit on the hot side. If you look at our waveform down here, you can see that it looks like it's clipping, but just hold on. We're gonna go over here to our primaries here, and I'm gonna begin to start bringing down my gain. As you can see, I still have the definition inside my whites here. Now another thing I want to show you is the Camera Raw tab. Let's go to the Camera Raw tab. Now here, where it says Project, we want to right click. We want to left click that, and we want to pick Clip. And when we pick Clip, it gives us the information on our clip. And Nikon RAW, it gives you lens distortion correction inside the RAW, also lens vignetting correction. So if I bring this over, you see how, look at the corners up here. It will begin to start correcting the vignette. Also, if I toggle on and off lens distortion, watch the edges here. That is very awesome to have those tools in your post-edit process. So now I'm going to go back to my primaries here and take a look at my image. Okay, image look decent, but there's still some work to do here. First thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make another node and I'm gonna work on the skin. So either I can right click and go to add node and add serial node right here, or I can select this node and hit Alt S, right? And I'm gonna right click and I'm gonna label this skin. Now in the skin node, I'm gonna go to my qualifier. Now you can use this qualifier, HSL qualifier, but I like the 3D qualifier. So I'm gonna hit this cube here, 3D. And what that allows me to do is draw lines on what I want to isolate. Uh-oh, I went too far with my line there. Let's do it again. Okay, now I'm gonna hit my add button. And let's turn on our highlight. It's gonna show us what we're isolating. Okay, so let's kind of blow it up a little bit, take a look. It's decent. So now let's clean it up a little bit. I'm gonna use my clean black. Then I'm gonna use my clean white. Clean up those edges. Now I'm gonna go over here and pick my graph. I want the vector scope. Now, with the color space transform, notice how the skin tones are right on the skin tone line. Now, this is the industry standard skin tone line here, and they're just about perfect. Me personally, I like my skin tones a little more on the red side. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go to my curves, and here is my hue to hue right here. Then once I get my hue to hue, I'm going to select the skin tones, see how it's already plotting my points here, and watch this, the vector scope graph as I move this middle point, moves it up and down, right? So I want it just a little bit above the skin tone line. Not much. I like to add a little red into the skin. So now I'll turn off my highlight window. I like that. So now, one more thing that I do with my skin tones, little pro tip here, I'm gonna add some contrast to the skin. Not a lot, just a little bit. It just gives it a little more depth, in my opinion. It's too much. Pretty nice looking image. So that's one way to do it. Now let me show you another way. Let's go back to our timeline here. Zoom out a little bit. I'm gonna select and I'm gonna Control C to copy. I'm gonna hit the down arrow to go to the end of the clip and then Control V to paste it. So basically all I did was duplicate the clip. So I'm gonna go back to my color tab. I'm gonna get rid of the skin and I'm gonna reset the node here and I'm going to relabel this and I'm gonna call it SCPO. That stands for saturation, contrast, pivot, and offset. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my saturation up to about 75 and then I'm gonna bring my contrast up to about 1.4-ish, somewhere in there. And then let's bring our waveform back here so we can see what's going on here. See, I have some room here at the top. I'm going to, let's just make this 1.4. Then you can move your pivot. Move your pivot based on the way you want the lighting in your scene. And so the pivot, what that is, it is the middle point between your contrast. Contrast will brighten up your whites and it will darken your shadows. And so there is a middle point to that. So as I move this, as you can see how it's moving up and down the graph, while I'm moving the middle point up and down the graph. If I move this way, I'm lightening it up. So I light it up just a little bit. And then I'm going to bring my shadows down a little bit. As you can see, I have room here. And then I'm going to bring my highlights up just a touch. Bring my gain up a touch. And then I'll take a look at it. All right, looks pretty decent. So let's work on the skin again. Let me get a frame that shows more skin. All right, so we selected this node and I'm gonna Alt S and go after. I'm gonna label it skin. I'm gonna go to our qualifier here, 3D. And we're gonna start isolating the skin. Hit the plus so I can draw more lines. All right, let's hit our highlight window here so we can take a look. I wanna clean the blacks a bit, clean the whites. Matter of fact, let's scrap this. Let's do this over. I don't want to get the hair this time. I want just the skin. Go ahead, plus. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to begin to start cleaning some of this up. All right, so now we turn off our highlight window and get rid of the marks. And then I'm gonna bring my vector scope back. I'm gonna go to my curves. Hue to hue here, sample my skin tones, bring my highlight window back, so I'm just isolating that. And notice, this is without the color space transform, and notice how the skin tones are below the skin tone line. So I'm going to move this up some, make it a little sharper. Somewhere around here. Let's see what that looks like. I think that's a little too much. So I'm bringing it down just a touch. Get a frame. Somewhere around here. Works for me. So now let's go back to our primary and let's add contrast to it. Just a little, not much. We'll go adjust the skin tone down. It's a little too red. All right, let's look at it again. Color correcting and color grading is very subjective. It's based on your liking. Now here's the one with the color space transform. Here's the one that I brought up the colors myself manually. I love the gratification of bringing out my own colors. I do use the color space transform sometimes in some scenarios, but mostly I like bringing the colors out for myself. So now I'm going to show you how to render a clip so that you can deliver it, right? So I'm going to get rid of this color space transform clip, and we're left with the one that we customly colored ourselves. Let's go to our timeline settings. I'm going to change this back to 4K. Hit save because I want to render in 4K. Then I'm going to go to the Deliver tab. In the Deliver tab, I'm going to name this, I'm going to call it Water Sample. Then you tell it where you want to put it. I'm going to put it right here in this. Format MP4, codec H.264. I'm going to use my video card to encode this. And of course, resolution is at 4K, 24 frames per second. And most of the time, it's going to have automatic here, and you can have best. What I want to do is I want to restrict to 95,000 when I'm doing 4K. And that's basically it. Then you just hit Add to Render Queue. Then you'll see it over here. Then once you get here, all you have to do is render all, and it begins to start rendering your clips. Now, I hope this took some of the mysticism out of working in Davinci Resolve. Me, myself, I come from Adobe Creative Cloud. I work with Premiere Pro, After Effects, Audition, and so now making the jump, which I'm glad I made the jump because I have way more control over my color grades and my correction and those sorts of things, and the gratification of bringing out my colors. I just love it. If you like this content, go ahead and subscribe. I got more content coming at you, and I don't want you to miss anything that may end up helping you. Comment down below with your concerns, your thoughts. What do you think I should put in the next video? And make sure you like. My name is Aaron Jones. I'm your big brother, and I got your back. Make sure you go out and you film something and kill it.